I do not believe that Brett Kavanaugh will overturn
His precedents
Roe
are overturned.
He noted that Roe had been reaffirmed 19 years later by Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and that it was precedent on precedent. He said it should be extremely rare that it be overturned, and it should be an example.
So you have obviously full confidence.
I do. We talked about whether he considered Roe to be settled law. He said that he agreed with what Justice Roberts said at his nomination hearing, in which he said that it was settled law. I could not vote for a judge who had demonstrated hostility to Roe v. Wade because it would indicate a lack of respect for precedent. What Judge Kavanaugh told me, and he's the first Supreme Court nominee that I've interviewed out of 6 who has told me this, is that he views precedent not just as a legal doctrine, but as rooted in our Constitution. And he reveres our Constitution. I asked him, is it sufficient if 5 current sitting justices believe that Roe should be overturned? And he said, no.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. Welcome to day 469. The Supreme Court has voted to strike down Roe v. Wade, according to a leaked draft opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito. While the draft could still change before it's finalized, the document was circulated among the justices in February, and at least 5 justices, including all 3 of Trump's nominees, voted to overturn Roe, which established a constitutional right to abortion 49 years ago. Justice Alito wrote that, quote, Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, end quote, adding that it is, quote, time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives, end quote. The Alito draft is related to the case known as Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which challenges a Mississippi law that bans abortions after 15 weeks. Justices Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett voted with Alito after hearing oral arguments in December, while Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan are working on 1 or more dissents. It's unclear how Chief Justice John Roberts will ultimately vote, or whether he'll join an opinion from one of the other justices or simply draft his own, but he is reportedly willing to uphold the Mississippi law. A final opinion is expected later this spring or early summer, and if the draft opinion is adopted, the court would let individual states determine the legality of abortion. Meanwhile, Chief Justice John Roberts confirmed the authenticity of the draft opinion, but insisted that the document is not final. He also said he has directed the Supreme Court marshal to investigate the leak, calling it, quote, a singular and egregious breach of trust, end quote. Roberts added, quote, to the extent this betrayal of the confidences of the court was intended to undermine the integrity of our operations, it will not succeed. The work of the court will not be affected in any way, end quote. Susan Collins, meanwhile, called the draft opinion completely inconsistent with what Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch told her during their private conversations when they were nominees. In 2018, Collins cast the vote pivotal in Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court. At the time, Collins had said Kavanaugh assured her that Roe v. Wade was settled law. At the same time, 26 states have laws aiming to limit abortion access if Roe v. Wade is overturned or weakened, including 9 with pre-Roe bans and 13 states with trigger bans in place, meaning abortion will instantly be banned if Roe is overturned. By contrast, 16 states and the District of Columbia have policies in place that explicitly protect the right to abortion. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, meanwhile, said she would immediately call for a special session to outlaw abortion in her state, while Republican state lawmakers in Arkansas, Georgia, and Indiana have all demanded special sessions to pass legislation limiting or eliminating abortion rights following the leak of the Supreme Court draft. Missouri's Attorney General said he's prepared to immediately ban abortion in his state if Roe is overturned. In D.C., Biden blasted the radical Supreme Court draft opinion, saying that other rights, including same-sex marriage and access to birth control, are now in question if the leaked document becomes the decision of the court. Quote, I believe that a woman's right to choose is fundamental. Roe has been the law of the land for almost 50 years, and basic fairness and the stability of our law demand that it not be overturned, Biden said. He added that the rationale used in the draft opinion would, quote, mean that every other decision relating to the notion of privacy is thrown into question, end quote. Biden said his administration will be ready when any ruling is issued, but warned that if the Supreme Court does overturn Roe, quote, it will fall on our nation's elected officials at all levels of government to protect a woman's right to choose, and it will fall on voters to elect pro-choice officials this November, end quote. Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer said the Senate will vote to codify the right to abortion into federal law, saying that this is not an abstract exercise, quote, this is as urgent and real as it gets. Every American is going to see which side every senator stands, end quote. Any such vote, however, would largely be symbolic, as Democrats lack the 60-vote supermajority needed to bypass the filibuster and pass Roe legislation in the Senate. Democrats also lack the support to eliminate the filibuster rules thanks to Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who have consistently rejected offers to drop or alter the filibuster. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, meanwhile, called on Democrats to primary Sinema when she's up for re-election in 2024, due to her resistance to ending the Senate's 60-vote threshold to protect abortion rights. In February, Manchin voted with Republicans to filibuster a House-passed bill that would have codified Roe. The vote was 46-48. Earlier, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi said, quote, the Supreme Court is poised to inflict the greatest restriction of rights in the past 50 years, not just on women, but on all Americans. They added, quote, the Republican-appointed justices' reported votes to overturn Roe v. Wade would go down as an abomination, one of the worst and most damaging decisions in modern history, end quote. And finally, Republicans celebrated the Supreme Court draft opinion to overturn Roe with calls for the FBI to investigate and pursue criminal charges against those who were responsible for the leak. Mitch McConnell called the leak an effort by someone on the inside to, quote, discredit the institution, end quote, and said that the DOJ must, quote, pursue criminal charges if applicable, end quote. Mitt Romney called the breach of the court's process an appalling affront against a critical institution and said that it should be, quote, fully investigated and those responsible should be punished, end quote. While Ted Cruz said the leak was a breach of trust being used to intimidate the high court. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, who recently signed a law banning abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy, suggested that the leak was a judicial insurrection intended to, quote, whip up a lot of the public to try and make the ruling very political, potentially try to bully the justices into changing one of their positions, end quote. Chuck Grassley, the Senate Judiciary Committee's top Republican, tweeted, quote, the leak was a monumental breach of trust within our judicial system. The independent judiciary must remain free from political intimidation and outside influence, end quote. And in the polls, ABC News and the Washington Post say 54% of Americans say the Supreme Court should uphold Roe v. Wade, compared with just 28% who say the ruling should be overturned. 57% of Americans oppose their state banning abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, and 58% oppose limiting abortion to the first 6 weeks of pregnancy. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.